Welcome to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast, where we look inside the mind of seven-figure entrepreneurs to see how they amplify their business and amplify their life. Let's welcome today's guest. Today's guest is an expert on lessening loneliness in the workplace. His book, Connectable, is the first book to ever address the impact of loneliness in the workplace. Dubbed the leadership whisperer, Steve has trained thousands of people and is a McGraw Hill and ATD Association of Talent Development publisher, author, keynote speaker, and writer in Forbes and Training Mag.com. He's the CEO of SyncLX and founder of Meyvn Global, building two industry-leading consultancies focusing on unlocking human potential. He holds a master's in organizational development and a BA in speech communication. Discover some of the principles that he's used consulting with the likes of Salesforce, Home Depot, Bridgestone, and Bank of America, to name a few. Please give a very warm welcome to the show, Steve Van Cohen. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing awesome, Paul. How are you?
I am good. We've also both got a passion of music as well, so I like the guitar in the background. So if this goes off course and we go rocking down the high street, then or what do you call rocking down the strip, right? Hey,
we could celebrate with a song if we do what we need to do effectively today.
Yeah, definitely. So Steve, let's jump straight in. You're really about, and this is something that I'd never seen before, right?
Okay.
The lessening of loneliness in the workplace, and that kind of, I was like, yeah, I suppose that does happen a lot. So tell me, how does a company create a culture of belonging?
Yeah, well, that's a huge question. Let's maybe give a little backstory first. You know, the business that I'm in is in the consulting space, really focused on helping companies build cultures where people can thrive, right? And I do a lot of work in the leadership development space, a lot of coaching. And as we saw the pandemic come through and basically disrupt all of our clients and create all this remote work and basically shift the way that people are thinking about the relationships now that we can't get face to face, my partner Ryan and I saw this huge opportunity to basically broach a topic that has not been broached, right? Like loneliness in the workplace tends to be kind of a taboo, hot topic that nobody wants to unpack. But like in the early part of last year, we created this program called Lessening Loneliness and Boosting Belonging. And we were pitching it to our clients to say, hey, is there an opportunity to talk about like what's happening internally and maybe, you know, provide some ideas and solutions on how to get these remote workers to feel more connected? And they all said, absolutely. And we created this initiative, and we've been doing workshops with Home Depot and Texas A&M and Liberty Mutual Insurance and like all these huge, massive companies who are starting to figure out, hey, we kind of have a problem here. We have disconnected employees and we should do something about it. So that's the backstory. Current state, you know, we're in this really interesting position where we're developing essentially the first products to help people at work feel less lonely. So we have assessments and training tools and a game that we're building called the Connect Deck. We have a book being published next year by McGraw Hill that comes out in February. So we will be essentially creating a whole new market space to help people feel more connected with their teams at work. And we're excited about that.
Cool. Talk to me about that game a little bit, because I'm a bit obsessed with gamification and all that kind of stuff. So is it a board game, card game, virtual?
Yeah, so it's a really unique hybrid. So it's a card game, but the card game has a technology component. So every day you pull the card and it has a to-do, a specific activity that will help you and your team feel more connected. And when you pull the card, there's a QR code that links with an app. And in the app, you have videos to give you more insight and information about why you're doing what you're doing. There's an online digital journal. There's all these little mini micro lessons that you can do as you're completing these assignments. So we've created a dual purpose between having a physical product linked with the technology, and it's super cool. So we've been starting to beta test this with some of our clients. Feedback has been great, and we're going to launch in the next couple of months.
Cool. I love that. I love the fact that you've blended the two together, and that's happening more and more now. That everyone's like, they want to blend both the technology and then that traditional stuff. People still like that touch and feel in the hands, right?
Yeah. And I don't know, like we were all kids at one point in time,
Yeah.
and having like a game just feels different. It's fun. And when you're doing something fun, you're more likely to do it. Right. So we found a nice way to pair the two together, and so far so good.
That's super awesome. So let's talk about leadership, right? So one question that we ask people a lot on the show, coming from more of the marketing space, is like, where do you think the next 5 years of marketing is heading? I'm going to ask you a different question. Where do you think leadership is heading in 2021?
Yeah. I think that as we look at the next few years of leadership, there's going to be a really important shift to getting back to a much more humanized approach to leadership, right? So, you know, depending on your leadership style, there still tends to be like a command and conquer. Like, I'm the boss. I'm going to like control everything. I'm going to micromanage. I'm going to tell you what you need to know. You serve me. And, you know, we've started to slightly see some shifts back into like a servant leadership, where now leaders are a bit softer. But I think we're going to take that to a whole nother level. And what we're going to start to see is leaders really focus more on taking down their armor and allowing the human side to show through a lot more organically, right? So I don't need to come in like as this kind of robotic leader feeling like I have to act a certain way. Really good leaders are going to be the ones who can show off, you know, some of their vulnerability. They'll be able to like connect with you and care about you and want to get to know you above and beyond like what you do at work. And I think as we look at the future of work, the emotional intelligence and the ability to really get down and dirty with those relationships is what's going to define, you know, really successful leaders to come. I also think that, you know, leaders in the future, as we saw the past couple of years, are going to need to get really good at navigating change. They're going to need to be really keen to, how do I identify the change that is going to come? How do I get people on board and excited about change? And then how do I do the right thing so I set the change up for success? You know, change fails way too often. And it fails way too often because of really simple mistakes that leaders make. So I think in the future, mitigating some of those mistakes is going to be really, really important. So those would be the two major things, Paul: more human and being able to really navigate change more successfully.
And do you think that happens even more in the corporate world, just because there's so many layers that when change happens, it's not like, you know, for example, my business, if I go, right, I've just seen the new iOS 14 update, and then we go, great, cool, let's put something in place next week. And then a big corporate are going, crap, we need 6 months to plan for this.
So I think, so there are very specific reasons for why change fails. One of the reasons why change fails is because you don't have the right involvement from the right people. So in your example, right, like you were able to make that decision, you understood the decision, you were bought into the decision, so you did it. And it's similar with a small team, right? We're all involved, we're all contributing, we're all able to say, yeah, this makes sense, let's go. When you're in a bigger corporation, and you're right, and there's more layers, and I no longer have my involvement, I'm just being told what to do, that creates a whole different dynamic, right? And a whole different level of commitment and buy-in. So that's one. The other is when people come up with their change ideas, they don't anticipate the actual difficulties, right? We fall victim to what's called the optimism bias, which means we think things are going to happen more pleasantly than they're actually going to happen. So we're not realistic when we are coming up with our goals. We're optimistic, and that gets us into big trouble. And the more, you know, time consuming and the more stressful and just the more taxing the change is, like, I'm going to get fatigue. And as soon as I hit a wall with my change fatigue, that's when I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. You typically also have the wrong stakeholders, right? So you have people who need to be on board and they're not, and people see that they're not on board. So even though they're being told one thing, they could obviously determine that, hey, this is not that significant for my boss or my boss's boss, so I'm not going to give a shit about this either. And there's a whole host of other reasons, but there's a lot of like pretty simple things that when you look at why change fails, you can go back and say, well, how did we not catch that? Or hey, how come we didn't put this control in place? And with a little bit, more strategy, we would see a lot more success.
It's fascinating from my perspective to look at like the difference between that corporate world and that like solopreneur or a small SME world. Do you think, like looking at the creativity level, right, when you get into that higher level, like because that you said that kind of gets taken away and people just get told what to do, is that one of the things that maybe stops that meaningful connection happening?
Yeah. So all of my work is in corporate Fortune 1000. So, my clients are like FedEx, Home Depot, Salesforce, Bridgestone Tires, Komatsu, Bank of America, right? So I'm building programs, I'm consulting, I'm coaching, I'm doing all this work with these huge companies. And one of the clients that I do a lot of work with is a huge mining company. And I won't say their name because I'm going to give them a little bit of a black eye, but they're a huge multi-billion-dollar, huge corporation. And at one of their operations, they had McKinsey come in, right? So the huge consulting company, they spent a couple $1 million. And McKinsey basically came up with this huge list of all of the things that they needed to do at the plant in order to make these changes. And it completely disconnected and pissed off the entire workforce. And the reason that it pissed off the entire workforce is because the people on the front line had already come up with all of those same ideas, right? And they talked to their boss, hey, well, how come we can't do this? Hey, we should try this. And they already had the solutions all along, but no one listened. And it took the $2 million to bring this consulting company in to basically pull that same information and give the same report. And now all of a sudden, hey, we should do these things, right? And that happens all the time because you have a bureaucracy typically in a very hierarchical organization that just like does not give the right level of attention, the right level of dedication, and they don't listen, right? They're quick to reject and they're not quick to understand. And that is causing a lot of disengagement and frustration, especially on the front line. So you're totally right.
Yeah, the phrase that comes to mind is people over policy. That's where people should be. I'm about 10 years behind, but I just started watching 24.
Okay. You're
I'm way behind. I'm way
behind.
Yeah, so watching that and the amount of times that they make the wrong decision because it's about who outranks who, and it's like, well, we just need to follow the policy, and it's like, well, if you actually look at the situation, this could have all been prevented. And is that similar? What you see a lot of the time?
Well, I in my workshops, I say this all the time, and it's a really well-known leadership gaffe, but people still tend to not really understand it because it's hard, right? So when you have been a total badass rock star and whatever you've done for your organization, to get from badass rock star, high performing, like achiever, somebody who's on the fast track, you had to be killer at what you did. And it was all about you and your performance, right? And that's ingrained in your identity to like how you just operate and show up. When you get promoted and it's no longer about you, right? And it's really about your team and like living through your team. For a lot of people, they just don't, even when they understand it, they still just don't have the capacity to shift how they operate, and it gets them into big trouble. And they still have this mantra of like, well, I was the best. I'm here now. Obviously, I know what's going on, and they want to bolster their ego by making those decisions and having, the spotlight on them. And, the leaders who can't get past that are the leaders who eventually become irrelevant.
So talk to me as well about rules, right? What business rules need to be broken?
What business rules need to be broken? Oh my goodness. One of the business rules that I think need to be broken is this rule of keeping things professional. I think it's such a bullshit rule that I just don't understand, right? So like keeping things professional essentially means you come to work not, fully like human, not fully yourself, and you are treading water on how to talk and how to act and what to share and what not to share, and you know, not having friendships because you can't be friends away from the office, or that might, you know, like be seen as a potential conflict. And you know, the companies that I've worked for who have the greatest cultures, and actually some research that came out of Gallup found that when you have like a best friend, like when you have really good close friendships at work, those are the teams that thrive because you're more comfortable, right? I'm able to say to you, Paul, like, hey, dude, what the hell are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
you are messing this up, man. Like, we need to talk about this. If I'm not comfortable having that kind of a conversation, I'm just gonna say, well, Paul's probably got it figured out. I'm not gonna mess with him. I'm just gonna like leave him alone and see what happens. And I just don't understand why organizations would suffocate the relationships of their people in really powerful and meaningful ways. So that would be one rule that I would say, you know, companies need to really think about. How professional are we asking people to be? And is that preventing relationships from growing in the right way? And then, you know, the second thing for rules that need to be broken, you know, there is a massive shift happening when you look at some of the emerging generations. They're coming into work in what used to be a ladder. Like, I start as an accountant and then I work up into like a CPA, and then I get into like supervisor, and I just continue to work my ladder linear all the way up to wherever I'm going to go. Emerging generations are thinking about, you know, how they're going to approach their corporate longevity more as like a cargo net. So they're not going straight up, they're going like sideways and sometimes down, and they want to have as many unique experiences as they can. So if they're an accountant, they might want to learn how to do project management, they might want to learn how to do some marketing, they might want to learn, you know, like they have a greater breadth of interest. And organizations who don't understand how to do like cross-functional collaboration, organizations who don't understand how to move talent around outside of their like defined scope of profession, those companies will have a hard time too. And a lot of big companies are very, very rigid with your progressions and what you can and can't do. And I think that's a rule that needs to be broken also.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think companies are so rigid? Is it because we've always done we'll do what we've always done and always get the same result?
Well, I think it's hard because if you're going to take an accountant and turn them into a project manager, they're going to require some training. They're going to require some coaching. They're going to, you know, require some resources. And that's harder than just letting them stay as an accountant. So, you know, it's pretty common to take the path to least resistance, right? Like, why would I do something more difficult unless I really understand what the impact is? And I don't think companies have started to look at and really grasp the emerging generation and how much they are going to redefine what work should be. And my business partner, his name's Ryan, and Ryan's an expert in emerging generations and the future of work. And he's written books on the topic, and he's, you know, an expert in that space. And when we work with our clients and talk to them about what's coming with Gen Z and, you know, millennials coming into supervisor roles, we keep telling them like, shit's gonna really hit the fan here pretty soon, and you're not ready, and we got to rethink some things, or else you're gonna have a really hard time keeping these people engaged.
Yeah, there was a quote that came to mind. That I think it was Jim Rohn. If you do the easy things, life will be hard, and if you do the hard things, life will be easy.
Yeah. I mean, which you know, we are growing up, me and you are kind of grown, but you know, we are living in a society where we've fallen into what I'll call the catch of convenience. And the catch of convenience is like, I no longer have to like do anything hard. Like, do you remember, I don't know about you, Paul, but like when I was growing up and a new piece of music came out, I would have to ride my bike
The CD.
to to a Tower Records,
Yeah.
and I would like go and ask the person behind the counter to like play the CD on the headphones, and I would listen to it. And then I would like have to go and check out, and I would have to like ride my bike to a friend's house. And then we would like listen to it on a boombox together because we couldn't stream anything. And like the whole process of just listening to a song that you wanted was like a grueling, time consuming, energetic process. And now the catch of convenience is I have my Spotify up, like whatever I want to listen to, boom, I got it, right? Like I want food, boom, it's delivered on my front door. I need a toothbrush, boom, the next day it's delivered. So, we're living in this world where things are easy, like really easy. And it's created just a different paradigm for like what we're willing to engage with. And if we think that it's going to be really difficult now more than ever, we start to just kind of put our hands up and say, I don't know if that's worth doing. And it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next decade or so, right?
There's a book in that, I think, The Lazy Generation or something like that.
But it's like, so that's when you do a Google search for like millennials are, and it fills in based on search results, the number one thing that comes up is lazy, right? So people are searching like millennials are lazy, and we're classified as being a lazy generation, but I think that's bullshit. We're not lazy. We just are mindful of what we're willing to do, and we're really quick to find the easiest way to do it. So that's not lazy as much as it is
Leveraged.
it's leveraged.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But in companies, especially like when you talk about breaking rules, what is classified as lazy oftentimes is like just inefficiencies. So when I worked, it was a construction company, and they had these like, they had a big campus, and they had people go to and from these meeting spaces. And this is like 7 years ago. So it was before everyone was on Zoom. And they had cameras in their meeting spaces, and they had the ability to stream and do online stuff, but they made people go like 20 minutes in between, these meetings physically, because they wanted everybody together in the room. Like, why don't you guys just like pop on a WebEx? Because that was WebEx at the time. Like, just pop on a WebEx call. Like, oh, we can't. We got to be together. We got to be face to face. And like, as a millennial, I'm thinking, well, that's bullshit. Like, we're killing hours and hours and hours and hours a week by traveling to and from these meeting rooms when we don't have to. And it's like, that's for me crazy, but for a established company that has these cultural norms of we have to be together in a meeting room, outside of COVID coming in and just saying, well, sorry, like that's no longer going to be allowed. It was impossible for them to grasp their mind around doing something different.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been reading Life Leverage again for the second time, and there's a case study in there. This guy works in corporate, earns 250 grand a year, and spends all his day just sitting at his desk, playing video games and eating potato fries and doing nothing. And then they find out after about 2 years that he's outsourced his whole job to China and the Philippines, and he's paying them like 50 grand a year and getting the rest. What did the company do? They sacked him.
Yeah.
It's like, should have promoted him. Because it is genius. It's the same thing like cheating on a test at school. It's like we're taught that no, we need to do all the legwork. It's like, well, someone else has already got the answer, so why wouldn't I just take those?
Yeah. I remember very vividly being in like my sophomore year of high school, and my math teacher was making us write out the math equations. And I asked, like, why can't we just use a calculator? And the teacher said, well, what are you going to do if you're somewhere and you don't have a calculator? Well, he's an idiot because I now have a calculator in my pocket all the time, right? But like that is it's like things are different now, and you should be promoting people who are finding the most efficient ways to do things. And if I have access to resources, why are those not being leveraged?
Definitely. So, Steve, I want to ask you a question that we ask everyone who comes on the show, and it's a deep question. What do you want to be remembered for when you die?
Yeah. Well, I'll answer that in two parts, because I think There are two different things. I have a 4-year-old daughter, and then I have a daughter coming in the next 7 weeks. So I have two
Congratulations.
girls. Thanks, man. And uh, specifically, I want to be remembered as being a great dad and giving them a life that they, could only have dreamed of, and making sure that, my wife is happy. And like, I have very specific family goals. My passion and my commitment and dedication is really because I want to create a life for them that is truly spectacular. So that is one. On the professional side, I'm so lucky, Paul. I get to do a lot of coaching, a lot of workshops, a lot of training. I'm interacting with people one-on-one all the time to help grow their skills and, improve their abilities. And I would love to be remembered as somebody who truly allowed people to see things in themselves that they didn't think were there, right? Like, Steve helped me understand that I can do something that I didn't think I could do. Or Steve made me realize I'm really good at something I didn't think I was good at. Like, that to me is where I get all of my fuel. And when I get messages from clients who say like, man, Steve, you were so right. I didn't think about that. And you helped me see this and you helped me do this. And now I'm, kicking ass and thriving. Like, those are the messages that I keep in a folder. I'm just like, yes, 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 yes. So that's where I would love to be remembered.
I love that second one, especially. It's an interesting way of phrasing it, because a lot of people say, like, I want to create a ripple effect and stuff like that. But seeing something in someone else that they don't see in themselves to help them get to where they want to go, that's like incredibly powerful for generations to come as well.
Yeah. And we could all do it. I'm lucky because I've been trained to do it and I do it professionally, right? So I do it more frequently than most, but anybody can pay attention to the people around them and start to pinpoint, hey, like, you're really, really good at this. Or I've noticed that you are killing it with XYZ. And do you know how special you are with, that thing? Like, people can do that. They don't, because it's maybe a bit uncomfortable, or it can come off as a bit cheesy, but I'm telling you, when you're able to open somebody's eyes, that's a whole nother level of engagement and relationship success. And it's powerful.
So, Steve, what is one quick win that people can use to amplify their business today?
All right, can I do two?
Go on then.
Boom. So the first quick win, and this is kind of a big one, but for my success, I've been running my business now for 12 years, right? So I've been an entrepreneur for a while, and I've started 3 companies, and each of the 3 companies had a very, very specific niche. So it wasn't just like a leadership consulting company. It wasn't just an online training business. Like, I had a very, very specific focus for each of the 3. And that very specific niche and that very specific focus really help grow and scale the businesses to where they are today. So that would be the first quick win. Is if you're looking at your business and you're trying to do it all, really be mindful of like the super, super specific thing that you do that no one else does. And then the second quick win is to leverage as many freelancers as you possibly can. I have a core team of 40, 30 of them are international freelancers that I use to do a whole host of things. So while I know it's a very common best practice to say like, oh, you got to surround yourself with talent and you got to bring on the right team, and all that's true, you got to be really mindful of the costs associated with those things. And I've been able to leverage and find totally brilliant men and women who are able to do everything I need at like a very high standard for a lot less than if I were to try to bring them on as full-time employees. So that would be the other thing, is to leverage Fiverr, Freelancer, all of this, Upwork, all of the different sources that you have access to get some cheap talent to help you do what you need to do.
Yeah, exactly. And especially when you're first starting out, like that first hire doesn't have to be, okay, I'm going to give someone 2-year contracts with employee benefits and all that stuff. Everyone's in the gig economy now anyway. So that, yeah, 100% on board with that. So Steve, what 7-figure entrepreneur would you nominate to be on the show next?
So I'll nominate a guy named Derek Lunston. Derek Lunston is a collaborator and he's a friend. He just sold a business called Scrimmage. It was like a online learning management platform, and he just started a new company that is focused on, it's called Life Guides. So it's all about pairing people together who have shared experiences. So the one person who's seeking guidance and advice can connect with somebody who's already been there, done that, and they can basically help each other out. So
super cool.
And he's a rock star. So Derek Lunston would be the guy that I recommend.
Fantastic. And you've dropped a ton of value on the show. So where can people find out more about Steve Van Cohen and what you do?
Yeah, so you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Steve Van Cohen out there. So go ahead and hit me up. You could also email me. Like, I'm all about helping and being as proactive with my gratitude, and I love to give. So people can email me at stevenc@synklx.com. And then you can check out, some of the cool work we do at going to synklx.com.
Fantastic. So go and check out all those links. Those links as well will be in the show notes. Steven, it's been amazing having you on the show. Appreciate you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Paul. Thanks, man.
And you've been listening to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast with me, Paul Ace, and my amazing guest, Steven Van Cohen. Remember, guys, amplify your business and amplify your life. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast. To access the show notes, episodes, and this month's giveaway, head over to www.amplifyto7figures.com. Remember, amplify your business, amplify your life.